Welcome to the red half of Sheffield. I guess we can call it video slash audio recording. I'm Chad Jarvis from the red half of Sheffield, and I am joined, and you guys that are watching this video, I'm joined by Andrew from the Tottenham Depot Podcast. I almost butchered that completely. Andrew, how are you this afternoon? On the back of a awesome win this morning over a London rival.
I'm very good, Chad, especially after Spurs took down Chelsea 2-0 at home. It was a very relieving victory. It's never a fixture that gives me any kind of ease going into, even though Chelsea are just in an absolute shambles. After playing them earlier in the year and earning a draw at Stamford Bridge, a really hard-earned draw, never would I have imagined months later that it would be that easy, but it was that easy. And it was kind of a pleasure to watch. I went to the pub this morning and enjoyed some breakfast and some coffee and the company of some fellow Spurs fans here in Arizona, and just enjoyed a wonderful London Derby victory. So it was a nice one, a nice way to start a Sunday.
Yeah, well, good. Congratulations on the big win. And yeah, I was gonna say in the middle of that, the handshake draw at the beginning of the season, the Thomas Tuchel, Antonio Conte, I'm going to kill you, you're gonna kill me. No, we're not. We're just gonna walk off and we're gonna act like we're mad at each other, but we're really not. But yeah, so I guess we'll get into it. As everybody knows, Blades have a huge FA Cup fixture coming up midweek against Tottenham Hotspur. So, Andrew, what are your thoughts on Spurs' season as a whole to this point in the season?
Man, it has been that is a very very loaded question. It has been a roller coaster ride for Spurs this season. A lot of hopes coming into this season off the backs of a pretty decent summer. But it has just been up and down for Spurs, and has not been one run of form or the other. And Antonio Conte's kind of future or lack thereof with the club has really been the subject of the season.
Mhm.
I think a lot of that is tied to some of the players that remain with the club, like Harry Kane, for example. But honestly, this season it feels a lot more negative, I think, among Spurs fans than it really has been. I mean, this is a club that, as we speak right now, sit in a Champions League place, in fourth place. They are still in the Champions League knockouts this season, with a second leg against AC Milan to come in about a week and a half here, and obviously still in this FA Cup, which is, I think, the best shot for Spurs to win silverware and to break this now 15-year long drought without a trophy. Of course, that's the thing we always hear about as Spurs fans is you haven't won a trophy, you haven't won a trophy. And I think that the FA Cup still remains this club's best opportunity to break that string. But the season as a whole, honestly, I think it's a lot more positive than it has felt. There's a lot of negativity around the club, and I think a lot of that does stem from Antonio Conte and kind of the will he won't he go this coming summer. And a lot of that has kind of been tied in too with this illness that he had, and he had gallbladder surgery a few weeks back, came back to the club, and now has left again to kind of recover still. And it's still not really known whether or not he'll be back for this match against Sheffield United or not. I think they do expect him back maybe by the weekend, by the time Spurs get back into Premier League action against Wolves. But it's just kind of a big unknown, and I think that's the cloud that's been covering the club and its supporters throughout the season. But overall, when you look at things, they're really not that bad, and everything is kind of still right in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's crazy to hear the contrasting. We're second in the championship, and you guys are talking about finishing fourth in the league, Champions League, and it's just crazy to see the other end of the spectrum, in which is, I mean, congrats to you guys. I mean, there's nothing short of being. I mean, like you said, Conte being out for, I mean, how many games has he missed in a row? I mean, you would have thought the season would have kind of completely fallen apart, but you picked up the pieces and kind of just keep trudging through.
And a lot of credit goes to his right hand man, Christian Stellini, who has stepped in his role. And he and Conte are obviously in a lot of contact still throughout all of these, not only throughout the week in preparation for matches, but even during matches, they're exchanging text messages about substitutions and different strategies and tactics. So it's not like Conte has just gone away and gone into a dark room and hidden. He's still very present at the club. He's just not physically there with the club right now. And like I said, Stellini deserves a lot of credit for the job that he's done getting this team to play not differently, but almost with more urgency in the last handful of games. And that's been a refreshing thing to see. There's almost a mindset around the club recently since Conte has been away that the club is playing a little more free, a little more loose without the manager Conte there to kind of breathe down their neck a little bit. There's almost a sense that these are some guys that are playing a little more with a little more freedom, and that's helping overall on the pitch.
Yeah, and you almost answered my second question I had for you. And I guess I'll rephrase it. With your point in the season being where it is, where your position where it is now, do you think it's more on the club's focus to be in the top four or going all out and winning the FA Cup? And like you said, ending that 15-year drought since Spurs last won a piece of silverware. What do you think the club, is it kind of 50-50 or is it, hell, we should just put the gas down and try and win? It's honestly, with the teams that are left in it, a couple of results go the other way. I mean, it sets up, if you guys are to get past us, it sets up pretty well for you guys to, maybe make a final. So, and I guess, where do you stand along with the club? Would you much rather go for the FA Cup or just secure that top four spot in Champions League for next season, or the FA Cup?
I think that there's no question that there is a mindset on folks that it has to be either or, like you're asking, and obviously it doesn't. It can be both.
Both, yeah.
The 15-year thing that I spoke about in this title drought, that is something that nags at Spurs fans. It's something that that really, like, it irks Spurs fans to hear that that there hasn't been silverware at this club for so long. So the FA Cup is extremely important, and it's something that Spurs fans certainly value more than something even like the League Cup. And obviously they nearly won the Champions League a few years ago. So there have been runs at it in the last handful of years, but the top four thing is actually also extremely important because of being in the Champions League is something that this club takes a lot of pride in. Not only just from being on the world's biggest stage in terms of global football and playing in that competition, but the financial ramifications that come with doing something like that. And that's obviously something that's very important to the club, is that brand exposure and the dollars that come in from that as well. So they're going to, if I had to answer that, I'd say it is a 50-50 thing. If you had to choose, it is very split. But they certainly do want to be going after both of these things at the same time, because they are both very, very important. The FA Cup, to me, would be a massive accomplishment for this club. But I don't think that they want to sacrifice anything in terms of going for the top four as well.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, without top four, that we saw over the last handful of seasons, the ramifications that can have for Spurs. They fell down into the Conference League under Jose Mourinho and had to kind of work their way back up, and getting back to that spot toward the end of last season under Antonio Conte was a really, really massive accomplishment, especially where they sat. They were sitting, I think, at one point eighth, with a run in to go, and made that hard charge and passed the North London rivals Arsenal in order to do it, which was a really big deal. Now, the hill's a lot taller to climb this season to pass Arsenal, obviously, in the league, but the top four is still a massive priority for the club as well. So, there's no real picking and choose. It's like picking your favorite kid. I mean, you love them both. You want them both to be there for you in the end.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I totally get it. I'm very envious of your position. So with that being said, how much do you think Spurs are going to put into the lineup they name against Blades on Wednesday? Do you think it's going to be Harry Kane in all your top players, or do you think it's going to be a weakened side? And if it is a weakened side, who are some of enlighten the Blades fans, and who are some of the danger men in that side? Obviously, we know about the heavy hitters. Who's I guess, second, not a top level, but still can be a danger man.
So it's interesting because as much as we're talking here about all the different kind of hands in different cookie jars that Spurs still have left in the season, FA Cup, Champions League, and fighting for top four in the league, the depth on this club still is really not there. I mean, they are still kind of a thin squad, and a lot of that is due to injury right now. The goalkeeper's going to be Fraser Forster. Hugo Lloris is out with an injury. The captain, the longtime captain for this club, is still out with an injury. So Fraser Forster will be the goalkeeper. They're not gonna. I would be shocked if they went to a backup from already who is their backup in Forster. The back line will likely remain Eric Dyer in the middle with Christian Romero at the right center back spot, and then the left center back. This is where it gets a little interesting because we've seen Clement Lenglet, who's on loan from Barcelona, in that spot with Ben Davis playing in the left wing back spot, but it could be Davis slotting back to the left center back spot and giving way to someone like Ivan Perisic at left wing back. The last handful of matches, it's been Davis because he's given them a little bit more defensive stability in that spot, but it could be Perisic coming off the bench in the left wing back spot instead. The midfield has been interesting as well because the injuries are very plentiful there right now. You've got Oliver Skipp, who scored his first goal for Spurs, an academy product, scored his first goal against Chelsea today. And he will likely be in that midfield with Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who's been a stalwart in this midfield. But the other option there would be Pat Maté-Sarr, who's a youngster who's come along and been pretty good of late. Injuries right now to Rodrigo Bentancur and Yves Bissouma make that midfield kind of, it's really three guys for two places. So you're going to see two of those three that I mentioned. And then the right wing back spot, Spurs went out in January and bought Pedro Porro from Sporting Club Portugal. But he has not got a ton of playing time because Emerson Royal, who had been there and had really struggled throughout the season, ever since Porro came on board, Royal has been playing like gangbusters, and he's been incredible. He's been pretty much man of the match quality the last 3 or 4 games that he's played in. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that spot. Maybe they do want to get Porro some game time in a cup match, especially with another game to turn around on Saturday and play against Wolves, and then Champions League midweek next week, as I mentioned earlier, against Milan. So that will be an interesting spot to look for. Pedro Porro, a much more attacking player down that right side. He did come on late as a sub in the game against Chelsea, almost as a right wing, even instead of a right wing back. But he's going to be a much more of a liability defensively than Emerson Royal is. He's a more sound defensive wing back who offers less going forward. And then the front three, I don't think there's any doubt you'll see Harry Kane in the middle. And then it's a matter of picking 3 players to flank him, and it'll either be Richarlison, Dejan Kulusevski, or Heung-min Son. And Heung-min Son is an interesting case because after winning the Golden Boot last season in the Premier League, Heung-min Son has had an awful season, and he's spent the last 2 games coming off the bench. Has scored off the bench last week against West Ham. Came off the bench today and produced a corner that led to a Harry Kane goal for Spurs' second goal against Chelsea. So he's actually looked good coming off the bench, running at some tired legs. I would expect Sonny to get back on the pitch as a starter in this match against Sheffield United. But we'll see. It's the attacking area is one area that Spurs are actually kind of okay depth wise. They also have Arnaut Danjuma, who they got in January as well, who is another option that could be in the mix, perhaps for some playing time. Probably not as a starter, but probably at least coming off the bench. So the attacking line, it looks good. It's everything behind that where the team right now is pretty much picking itself. So it'll be interesting to see how the rotation works out. Like I said, especially with more games to come, with Spurs having to play in all these different competitions.
Yeah, that is, that's the question to be said for both sides. Blades, trying to grab automatic promotion back to the Premier League, and you guys having your hand in every cookie jar there possibly could be. Um, so it's very like it's not cut and clean at what either side's going to put out as their players, because it could be heavy squad rotation or it could be the best two sides that the both clubs have and they want to go for it. Um, but yeah, it should set up for an interesting game on Wednesday night. Have the question for you: have you seen any of Blades Sheffield United's games this season? Any of them?
I have not, but I will say it's not surprising when you look at the championship standings and see them sitting second. And I will, I'm not going to jinx anything by saying they look fairly comfortable right now. They look in a good spot for promotion and looking like they're going to be returning to the Premier League next season. And that's not a surprise. And that actually, to your point about what are these teams going to do on Wednesday in terms of rotation, I think that actually is a real key to if you're looking ahead to what Spurs might do. I don't think there's going to be any doubt that they're going to take this game seriously and not rotate a ton. I think they would be foolish to do so. I think they really need to take Sheffield United seriously. This is a club that has obviously done damage to Spurs in the past in recent seasons. We've seen that. They are a tricky bunch, and it's not like Bramall Lane is an easy place to go play a game. So they are going to be in for it. I am expecting a really, really tough test from the Blades. And I would be shocked if there is a ton of rotation from Spurs end for that exact reason. Like you said, that Sheffield United is obviously having a good season and well on its way to, at least being in the playoff. But it really looks like that second spot is theirs for the taking at this point in the year. So I would be, like I said, very shocked if Spurs went and mess around too much with this one.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Okay, with that being said, what are your predictions? You can go score predictions. What do you think happens in this match Wednesday?
I got it. I am not a huge score prediction guy. I do think Spurs, just with the way that they're playing right now, they have been able to be sound enough defensively. Chelsea in this most recent match, and even West Ham last week, were able to have a lot of the ball and able to produce going forward, but never to really threaten seriously. And all of a sudden, Spurs in the last handful of matches, even in their defeat in the first leg of the Champions League a little while back to AC Milan, they never really felt super under pressure, even though they don't have the ball. And Spurs don't need the ball to be dangerous. Spurs can strike on the counter, and they can also grab the ball and have some fun with it as well, with all the attacking presence that they have going forward. So I do expect Spurs squeeze by Sheffield United, but like I said, I don't think this is an easy match. I don't think this is a walkover. I think it's maybe a 1-0, maybe a 2-1. I think it's tight. And I don't expect it to be easy for either side, because I think this is something that both of these clubs obviously would like to move on and advance past this round and see what they can do going forward in this competition, which is, it's a big deal, this competition. I think we brush these cups off sometimes as just, this is just part of it, but I think it would be really, really big for either of these teams to move on from this stage.
Yeah, for sure. I can't, I mean, as much as my heart, I want to go with Blades to pull the upset, I just can't see it. I think we lose 3-1, get knocked out. I'm more concerned about getting back into the Prem and, getting that payday, as they say, going up, because that's, if we don't go up this year, then the wheels will come completely off and we'll just be hanging around middle of the championship for years to come. But yeah, I do think we do suffer defeat, and I mean, it is what it is. If the greatest team in the history of the world, Wrexham, couldn't take us out, Tottenham probably will.
I gotta be honest. I was watching. I said I hadn't watched Sheffield. I did watch both legs against Wrexham just because everyone was a buzz. I haven't watched them in the championship this season, but I have to be honest with you. I did not want to see Wrexham. I am much happier to see Sheffield United in this stage of the FA Cup, because you face Wrexham in a stage like this, as a team like Tottenham, that's a club that has nothing to lose. Not that Sheffield are going to play timid; they're going to come at this with everything they have as well. But I was fearing having to have the wrath of Wrexham on Spurs, so I was relieved almost that was the way that it played out.
You don't want anything to do with them, and we are still. Our podcast is still. I mean, when we beat them and finally knocked them out, they were relentless. I mean, they just kept coming. And it's just like we have just completely moved on, and it's just like it's a never ending cycle. And it's just like, okay, the game had moved on, and the result had happened. Okay, you guys are out. Go on with your promotion chasing in the National League. We'll go on with our deal. And then it's just like it just stirred up a storm of just everybody coming out of the woodwork. And as it has captured the hearts of a bunch of Americans over here with a documentary, of course, everybody jumping on their wagon and so forth. But yeah, it was crazy. And yeah, you didn't, we had to put up with that for 2 legs. You didn't want any of that. Trust me, 100%.
No
You didn't
question.
want any of it. Yeah.
No question about it.
So before I let you go, I'm starting a new segment that I just started today. Your favorite beverage while watching a Spurs match?
Oh, that's a great question. Wow. It's funny enough. Normally it's just a coffee because
Because it's so early.
We watch it's so early over here in the States. But if it was going to be an alcoholic beverage, it would honestly probably just be a Guinness. We out here in Arizona, I go to Fibber McGee's. I'll shout them out over here in Chandler, Arizona, and it's a nice little Irish pub, and we'll just sit down if there's maybe an afternoon cup match like it will be this Wednesday for us. It would probably just be a Guinness to sit with.
I like that. I'm right there. I'm right there with you. But I think that is all the time we have. I'd like to thank Andrew for coming on. Andrew, for the people that want to follow more about and you just dive more in Spurs, where can the people follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow us at Tottenham Depot. We post weekly podcasts, and we're actually going to have quite a bit of content coming up here right after the Sheffield match, because a handful of us are actually going over to London next week. A couple of us are going to be at the Milan match, and then we're going to be seeing Spurs play Nottingham Forest days later. So we're going to be producing a lot of content from over in London as well, doing our best to put some stuff up on the socials. A bunch of us who do the pod here in the States are meeting up with our one guy, Shuban. I'll shout him out. He's based over in London, and we're going to be having a week over there and doing the stadium tour at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and things like that. So for anybody who's interested in that kind of Americans in London catching their favorite team content, we'll be doing a lot of that on the Tottenham Depot in the coming weeks. And like I said, you can follow us on Twitter at Tottenham Depot.
Okay, will do. And if you guys haven't done so, and I don't know why you're watching this video and haven't done so, follow us at the Red Half of Sheffield on Facebook and on Twitter at Red Sheffield. And you can follow me personally at cjarvis_13. So until Wednesday afternoon and / evening over in England, when we take on Spurs in the FA Cup, I'm going to say up the Blades.